Welcome to the first official episode of the Spidey Cast. This is a new show that is, I'd say, replacing the main channel content for the foreseeable future, and that's because, back in the day, when it came to my main channel videos, I used to script everything out word for word. A lot of times the videos would take a heck of a lot longer than they needed to, and sometimes I would just outright scrap scripts because I just thought they were bad. So we're switching to this form of content for the foreseeable future, and most likely for good, because a lot of the stuff I want to talk about requires more than 5 minutes to talk about. They're very detailed topics, so some people may think that's a little scary and not like that, or some people may not think that's a good change, but here's the thing. I'm going to timestamp these so you don't have to listen to the whole thing. I'm not going to force you to sit here listening to me talk for an hour without any form of timestamp. In the spirit of this being the first episode of this long-running show, let's talk about my beginnings as a nerd, because I've been a nerd since I was born. Computers, games, movies, sometimes TV shows. I don't usually watch them anymore, even though I do enjoy them. But I don't watch long-running shows because they kind of take up my time, and I'm a guy who likes to be a creative person, so if I'm not creative, for me, I'm just like not really having much fun, and that's the truth. But enough rambling. Let's talk about the beginning. So I was born at the tail end of the 90s, 1998. Lived in a rural area, kind of country-ish. So for me, I didn't have good internet. It was like 8 meg speeds back in the day. We didn't have smartphones. We had flip phones. We didn't have iPads or any of that fancy stuff. Now, we did have game systems. We had Xbox 360, PS3 at some point, PS2, GameCube, and Wii. We had those. And we also had a computer, a family computer. And what was funny was everyone else was playing the consoles, playing Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 1, which is a incredible game from 2007. It's legendary. It's probably the best FPS that will ever be released. I think it's better than Halo. Sue me, Halo fans. But basically, I was on the computer while everybody else was on their consoles playing online with other people. I was a single-player guy and still am. See, for me, what gets me interested in games is the fact that I can be immersed in a crazy world with an insane story. That's what immerses me. That's what makes me excited. It's like playing a movie. I love movies. So for me, games with big stories are really awesome. I love having even just linear stories. I will replay linear games to this day that have the exact same story, like Arkham Asylum, and have a blast, even though I know exactly what's going to happen. For me, it has to be a single-player game. I can't do multiplayer games. For me, they're too arcadey. In some ways, you are chasing a number. Like back in the day, you chased numbers, and no slight to people who like those games. No slight to them at all. For me, single-player is just, it's my life. It's my lifeblood. Don't really like MMOs either, but regardless. But again, I was the kid who was playing the computer games while everybody else was just on their favorite console. So for me, the computer has been my favorite system since the beginning. And it's because I can make stuff like this. It's because I can make games. I can modify games. Back in the day, I was a massive game modder, and I tried to get back into it recently, but I have a desire to make my own property now. But back then, I didn't. But anywho, I was the kid who was modifying games at like maybe age 12. I was changing textures. I was adding in music. I was trying to create custom levels in certain games. I was that kid. I was a tinkerer. I loved hearing about the development of video games. I loved studying it. And now I want to create games. Back then, I didn't have the ambition to create games. All I wanted to do was see how my favorite games ticked and how they worked. Now, Obviously, nowadays, people are much stricter with modding. Not every company supports it. You kind of have to get in touch with them or hope and pray they have mod tools, which I wish that wasn't the case. I wish people would just let you modify their games, but unfortunately, that's how it is. That's how people are. They're overprotective of their 20-plus-year-old games that people mod, even though there's really no reason to be. We also didn't have the extremely popular MCU around. All we had were the awesome Spider-Man trilogy movies, which deserve an episode of their own. We had Michael Keaton Batman. We had Batman Begins. We had Dark Knight, which I don't care about Dark Knight. We had all that stuff. And for me, I loved Batman Begins. It made me want to be Batman. I loved Spider-Man. It made me want to be Spider-Man. Those were my movies. That and the freaking cartoons. Superhero cartoons were some of the absolute best form of entertainment. And in my honest opinion, they're a lot better than those silly movies with real people doing silly superhero things. I'm sorry. Cartoons look better. Live action breaks my immersion. It does. Like, I'm not saying there's no good live action superhero movies, but it still is more interesting to me when it's presented on a comic page or in animated form. Like, it makes more sense seeing someone like Thor, and it feels more immersive seeing someone like Thor in cartoons. Because when you see a real person doing ridiculous things, it gets kind of hokey sometimes, depending on what you're watching. Not that I don't like Thor. The first Thor was amazing, but another thing we didn't have back in the day was streaming services. And honestly, those were better days. Because nowadays, if you want to watch a show, let's say something's on Netflix. Let's say like The Batman. That was a show I used to watch and still do watch. It's amazing. I watched that show on DVD first, and then I watched it on Netflix. It was on Netflix, and then guess what happened? DC made an app and then split it off. And then slowly that became HBO Max when that died. And then they moved it over there. So I have to buy another streaming service just to watch a freaking Batman cartoon from 2004, I think. In my eyes, it's basically just become another form of cable. Because back in the day, you had to purchase different networks to get different shows. Now you have to purchase different apps to get different shows. Because they split them off. DC got greedy, or whoever it may be. DC or Disney or Marvel got greedy, and they broke off into streaming services. And if you wanted to watch a movie, you either had to buy the DVD, so you had to go inside the store, go to the DVD aisle and buy the DVD, or you had to go to the theater and just watch the dang movie. You had to sit your butt in those seats, get your popcorn out and your pop, and then you'd sit there and watch the movie. And for me, I loved those days. And they're still here to a degree, but a lot of people just use streaming services, and they're getting lazier and lazier. And for me, I think the theater was an experience. It was an experience as a kid that I loved, and I still like it a lot. I go to a local theater. I go to an Imagine theater. They have amazing heated seats around here. It's amazing. They're basically heated recliners. Easily the most comfortable seats I've ever been in, and they're amazing. And I honestly wish I had those back then. But we go to this crappy theater in our local rural town area. There were sticky floors. But you know what? I didn't care. Because I got to see a movie at a cheap price with my family. Frickin' Spider-Man 3, which, you know what? I love Spider-Man 3. I don't care what anyone says. It's an amazing movie. I love the Spider-Man trilogy. They're probably my favorite movies of all time, other than Star Wars. But it was just something else. It was something else back then, and I miss those feelings. I miss that, oh, we're going to a movie and really, like, this is a really good movie. Because back then I got wowed by movies. You had hit after hit after hit after hit that was constantly coming out back then. But now it just kind of feels like dud after dud after dud because of DEI. But let's talk about the cartoons first. That was one of my earliest, that was kind of my earliest nerd stuff was cartoons. I watched a ton of them as a kid. I would just get up and turn the TV on and look at the list of recorded programs, or go to like Boomerang or Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, and then I just watch their shows. or whatever marathons or whatever shows they had on, or even reruns. I watched Scooby-Doo, which easily my favorite cartoon series, period. What's New Scooby-Doo, and the original specifically. I watched SpongeBob from season 1 to like 10, and I thought every single season was extremely good. Personally, I'm not one of those haters of new SpongeBob. I think new SpongeBob actually has some good episodes, at least until season 10. Past season 10, I'd say is not very good. I don't like season 11, 12, or 13, or wherever they're at. I don't like the bombastic, over-the-top humor. I hate that everyone's yelling all the time and being annoying. But I watched Chowder. I loved that show as a kid. Absolutely did. I probably don't even remember half the episodes. Like, there's some I do remember, but some of them are blurs now. I still watch it sometimes, but not nearly as much as when I was a kid. And I saw that from beginning to end, which, hard to believe. Frickin' Spider-Man the Animated Series, and Batman the Animated Series, and The Batman, all those amazing cartoons. Freaking Batman the Animated Series, everybody likes Batman the Animated Series. I don't think there's a person on Earth who doesn't actually love that series, especially if you were born in that era. It was the thing, man. It was the popular, hip thing. It had the best Batman and Joker voice. It had the best art style. It had the best story arcs. Clayface, Two-Face, frickin' Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Penguin, all those characters. Ra's al Ghul, or Raish, depending on how you pronounce it. I usually say Raish, but I decided to say Ra's instead, so the mainstream people could get what I was talking about. Those were amazing shows. Like Batman the Animated Series made you feel bad. Not feel bad for the villains, but they tried to give them like redemption arcs. They made Harley Quinn likable, which in this day and age for me is impossible to have be a fact. She's completely unlikable in 90% of the stuff she's in now. She's just an annoying edgelord who they pander to all the time. And then she kills frickin' Batman and Suicide Squad kill the Justice League, which is embarrassing. But regardless, I feel like there was something there in that series that was just so good. The DCAU was really good. I miss the DCAU. You'd always get like new episodes or reruns, and I miss those days. I'm sad that the DCAU died. But what was cool about Batman the Animated Series is it was like 1940s and 30s. You know, it's not modern times. At that time, the 40s were old, and they still are. They're way older now, but they wanted to kind of mix future tech, like futuristic tech, with the 40s and more modern stuff, and it was really cool. Bruce Wayne was classy. Sometimes you get episodes with jazz music. You had Harvey Bullock, who was amazing, like a bumbling detective, but he was also kind of a likable character, despite his constant desire to be against Batman. Commissioner Gordon, easily the best Commissioner Gordon is in Batman the Animated Series. He works with Bruce. He trusts him. You know, he's always there for him. He's willing to put up with his vigilante antics, and he kind of jokes around with him sometimes. They have a bit of a banter going on. But Bruce Wayne is amazing in that. Bruce Wayne is a human being. A lot of versions of Batman seem to forget that Bruce Wayne actually cares about people. He cares about Harvey Dent. He's not mad at him. He's sad that Harvey became Two-Face. He cares about Catwoman, even though she's on the wrong side of the law. He cares about everybody. Almost everybody. And you know what? I love that. I love that he smiles. I love that he's happy. I love that he's got a little bit of sarcasm and humor to him. And he's not just some brooding guy, which I'm okay with brooding Batman, but you got to add some personality to him personally. I think you need to add some form of depth, and his relationship with Alfred is so good. Oh my gosh. Alfred is the best father figure, gets some of the best episodes. Mask of the Phantasm, best Alfred moments. He cares about Bruce. He's like his dad, and he never wants to let him go. Like, he never wants to see him die, and he's just a great character. That show, I could do a whole podcast on just that show or any of these cartoons, but you know what? We're going to move on to the next cartoon. The Batman. So yes, we're going to another Batman cartoon, but this one was different. In some ways, the series was darker than the animated series, in my opinion. Like, the art style was darker. There was darker colors. The backgrounds were more like decrepit, and the sky was green and like desaturated, and it was cool. It gave you kind of a feeling that Gotham is pretty bad. It's in bad shape. Batman in this is probably my favorite Batman. I'm not going to lie to you. I said that about the animated series one. This one's tied. And in some ways, he's a little better. First off, Reno Romano is an amazing Batman. No slight against the Kevin Conroy fans. I do like his Batman. But Reno Romano also makes Batman feel like a human being. His voice is so cool. I'm just going to be honest. As Batman, it's so cool. It's very deep. It's very intimidating. It's very threatening. In some ways, it's more threatening than Conroy's, at least at the beginning of his career, because he was a lot softer. But his Bruce Wayne's amazing. I feel so bad for this guy. I feel terrible for him. Guy's 26. I'm 26. I'm the same age as that Batman now. And I feel terrible for him. The guy really... You can tell that his parents' death weighs on him so much in this series, especially in the Bane episode. You can tell that he just cannot get it out of his head. And that Bane episode is absolutely the best. Batman gets destroyed by Bane in this episode, and it makes sense because Bane is a steroided up psychopath. Like, he's huge. So our boy gets destroyed, and then Alfred has to pick him up. And he's talking about how he's bleeding internally, how this line of work is going to get him killed, how he doesn't want to see him die. And he almost leaves Bruce Wayne to die. He almost leaves him because Bruce is like, I can't give up on this city. Because of his parents' death, he cannot give up on this city. He can't give up, even when he's in so much pain that he can't even use his wrench to build this Batbot, this giant robot he made to fight Bane. Like, and when he sees Bruce struggle with the wrench, you know, as he's about to resign and leave, Alfred comes back and helps Bruce build the Batbot because he can't let his master, his son, do this on his own. He knows he won't be able to make it in this life without Alfred. And then there's a flashback to Bruce Wayne crying in a hallway with Alfred, and you know, well, Alfred's not there yet. He's crying alone with his mom's pearls in his hands as she recently died that day in front of his face. So he's just sitting alone crying in the hallway of the police station. No one's helping him. Everyone's walking past him. No one's comforting him. But then Alfred comes, and Alfred hugs him and says, you know, everything's going to be okay. And he takes him with him back to the Wayne Manor. And he says, I'll never leave your side. I will always be by your side. And my goodness, that scene is extremely powerful. It's very powerful. So Batman comes back in his giant, really awesome looking, like seriously, the Batbot is so cool. He shows up in the giant mech bat suit, and then he beats the crap out of Bane. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words. He beats the crap out of Bane, and then he finally, unfortunately for him, Bane gets the upper hand, rips off his arms of his mech suit. Bruce sees that there's a glass part on one of the dispenser things on his hand on Bane that dispenses the venom, and then he stabs his batarang into it. And Bane shrinks down and passes out. And he loses the fight. And Batman has finally won. And then he asks Alfred to pick him up. And then the camera just zooms out as he's on top of this giant building. And man, that's some of the best episodes in superhero cartoons, period. That Bane episode is so good. Plus, you have a Joker that is incredible. That Joker is amazing. Like, Kevin Michael Richardson, shout out to that guy when it comes to voice acting. He is so good at being Joker in this series. And you never think in your head that this would be the guy voicing him. You don't picture it at all. He's got dreadlocks, and it works. Joker has freaking dreadlocks, red eyes. He's got red crack eyes. He's got dreadlocks, and he's like a martial artist. He can actually go toe-to-toe with Batman in combat. He doesn't just fall over the second that Batman punches him in the face like a wall of bricks. It's just really cool. He's an amazing Joker. And then there's Clayface. And this is the best version of Clayface. I don't care what people say about the animated series version. I like that one, but I am not as sympathetic to him nearly as much as I am to the Ethan Bennett Clayface. Ethan Bennett was Bruce's childhood friend. You know, they used to play basketball together. They used to hang out together. They were best friends, closest friend outside of Alfred. And they just hung out all the time. They're bros. And Ethan's like, okay, so you want me to catch the Batman. You know, you want me to catch this vigilante. He's telling his police chief that because he's a police officer. You know, he works for GCPD with Ellen Yin, who's also a great character in her own right, and they should have never removed her from the series. Look, I like Commissioner Gordon as the next guy, but Ellen Yin is extremely likable. Like, even when she hates Batman, there's something about her that's likable. Plus, she's Asian. My weakness is Asian women. But she is such a good character. She's, like, intelligent. She's got a little bit of a wit to her. She's got some sarcasm. She's kind of fiery. But she's still feminine. See, I like it when women are still feminine, personally. I don't like masculine women. And that's exactly what MCU did with Black Widow, but we'll get to that. But Ellen Yin's an amazing character, and then she slowly learns to care for Bruce and Batman as time goes on. But frickin' Ethan goes through the ringer in this series. His police chief does not like the fact that Ethan actually kind of wants to support Batman's vigilante activities, kind of like an early Commissioner Gordon. But unfortunately, you know, even though they have this close bond, him and Bruce and Batman, to a certain extent, that doesn't save him from getting caught in the middle of Batman's crazy war on crime, which he has to do because if Batman's not there, then who's there to stop the criminals? But Ethan gets caught in the middle of it, and Joker kidnaps him and psychologically torments him, basically. Torments the crap out of him. And tries to make him go insane so he can, you know, be like Joker. He wants to make him like Joker. But Batman is able to stop it, which, keep in mind, this is a kid's show. But Batman comes in to stop it. And he throws the batarang at Joker's gun because he has a special Joker putty formula thing that can make surfaces turn into putty. Kind of like clay, basically. You see where this is going. But he throws the batarang at the gun, it falls to the ground and breaks, and Ethan inhales the Joker putty. And then he comes home and, you know, everything seems okay. Joker stopped, all seems well, but unfortunately, when Ethan goes up to the mirror, he's coughing a lot, he doesn't feel good, but he goes up to the mirror, he tries to rub his eyes, and then part of his skin turns into the putty, and gets stuck to the side on his face. And you know that he is officially Clayface, and he finally turns into Clayface in like a horrifying transformation sequence. And he's trying to get help. He's yelling for help. Like, everyone's treating him like a freak. He has no idea what to do. And then he decides to get revenge on Joker. So he goes after Joker, and for some reason Batman cares. Like, dude, just let him kill Joker. Who cares if Ethan kills him? Yes, Ethan's kind of a nutcase. Yes, you have to stop him, but just let him kill Joker. You'd be doing the world a favor if you did that. So Batman and Ethan, who's basically Clayface now, 100%, fight each other. Batman gets beat up real bad. Ellen Yin comes in to help him for the first time ever. This is kind of a shocking moment because it's supposed to be like a start of a partnership, because at first she was the one who hated Batman and Ethan was the one who liked Batman, and they kind of reversed it. So Ethan leaves, and before he does, he's like tearing up, and he's like, you know, what's become of us? Because they're not friends anymore. So he leaves. He's like super sad because he just wanted to kill Joker and then presumably go back to having a normal life, but I don't know if that was possible for him. He was kind of crazy. But, Bruce and Ellen meet up at a cafe and they're having dinner together. And they're talking about how the loss of Ethan just sucks so much because they both cared really deeply about him. But then they go outside and they think they see him in the crowd. So they run out there. And then Ethan disappears completely. And it ends on a kind of creepy note. I remember as a kid, they're like, oh, he could be anywhere. And Batman's like, he could be anyone. And that was just a phenomenal episode. See, they don't make stuff like that anymore. Superhero stuff is so much more generic now, in my opinion, than how it used to be back then. Then we have Spider-Man the Animated Series. And oh my gosh, he's the best Spider-Man. Christopher Daniel Barnes is my Spider-Man. Not Tobey Maguire, not Andrew Garfield, and certainly not Tom Holland. Certainly not him. He's good in his last movie, but the first couple movies he's in are just kind of like, they're all right. They're not that good to me. They're not Spider-Man. But Barnes is Spider-Man. He has the wit, the sarcasm, the corny puns. He's got the lady killer persona. He's got the, slightly more devilish, handsome charmer type guy. He's still a nerd at heart, but he's a lot more of a sociable nerd. And he's in college, which I liked as a kid. I didn't want to see people who were my age. I didn't need kid appeal characters to relate to a character. I didn't need... Adults had real problems in cartoons. They had actual issues that were relatable. Kids did not back then, and even now they don't. And the symbiote arc in that cartoon is probably one of the best arcs I've ever seen in anything. Best black suit arc. Best... Just best. It's just the best. Honestly, I can't think of any other words to describe it. It is so good. It reinvented the black suit story to the point where the comic books stole the plot of that with the whole black suit giving Peter Parker negative emotions, and they added it to the movies. Now, did they necessarily do really good at adapting what this amazing story brought to the table? No, they didn't. Not at all. I like Tobey Maguire, and that Sandman fight is incredible. It's incredible in Spider-Man 3, but it doesn't compare to this. Like, his anger, you can feel his pain when he's, getting real mad at Sandman. And then they had to make him dance around like an idiot. But in this, they don't do that. Peter's just mad. Peter's tired of being treated like crap by the public, by his own aunt. He's tired of being treated poorly by every single person. He's sick of Jameson constantly bad-mouthing him, treating him like crap. So you know what happens? He finds this little space rock by this crashed spaceship that landed because John Jameson was going to be coming back from the moon or whatever planet he was on. I think Mars, maybe. He took the rock, which is known as Promethium X. He took the rock, and then something happened. Some bad stuff happened, and then the ship had a malfunction, crashed into the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge. Rhino abducts John Jameson and steals the Promethium X because Spidey's not strong enough to deal with Rhino. Rhino is able to steal the Promethium X too, and then he leaves, but not before he throws Spider-Man into a lake. And then basically, the Promethium X secretly has its black goo that was contained in it. It goes all the way to Spidey. It falls into the lake with Spider-Man. So Spider-Man's got this weird black goo on his costume, and he's like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? So basically, J. Jonah Jameson badmouths him. Aunt May badmouths Spider-Man. And Peter's just getting tired of this. He's tired of J. Jonah Jameson being upset with him. He's tired of his own aunt hating his secret identity, even though she doesn't even know it's Peter, and constantly calling him a menace. He's tired of the public hating him. So he goes up to his room and throws his black goo-covered costume into the closet. And then he goes to bed. And then he has this nightmare, this weird nightmare of a black version of his Spider-Man costume and a red version pulling him, like they're pulling at him. It's like a tug of war for control over his consciousness. And then he wakes up, and then he has a black costume on, and he's by a window, webbed up. He's like doing the pendulum web, where he's like a pendulum. He's looking at himself through the window, and he sees a reflection of himself in the black costume. So he's above the streets of New York by a random building. So the suit took him there on its own. So he's not in bed anymore, safe in his house. And then part 2 happens, and then he basically realizes that the suit feels awesome. It makes him stronger. He gets like a sort of a shape-shifting ability that can change his clothes. So he disguises as a cop to get away from the authorities. Since our old pal Jonah Jameson put a bounty on Spider-Man thinking that he kidnapped his son, which proves that Jonah is just as clueless as he always is, assuming that Spider-Man, who saves people's lives, would, for some strange reason, kidnap his son. Like, why would he have a vendetta against Jameson? When has he ever done anything actually outwardly wrong to Jameson? Never. So Spidey has a rematch with Rhino and absolutely destroys him. He basically lifts Rhino up. He doesn't even have to fight him. That's how pathetic it is. Rhino stands no chance against Spider-Man in this new, really cool-looking, best-designed version of the black suit. And then he plans on killing Rhino. So he's like, oh, I'm not anyone's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So he picks up this metal, like, steel door, this massive door, and he's about to kill Rhino, and Rhino's freaking out. And then he remembers that he's been lashing out at the people he loves. So he stops himself from killing Rhino and leaves him behind, which probably should have captured him, but whatever. So he heads over to Dr. Connor's lab to see if he can find out how to get this suit off of him, or at least research the suit. At this point, Kingpin reveals that he's the one who kidnapped John Jameson. So Spidey gives Dr. Connors a sample of the symbiote suit and then heads out to go save John Jameson. He then recreates the rock, the Prometheum X, from the shuttle crash, and then he takes it over as ransom for John Jameson's life. Before this, though, before he does all this, he went to Eddie Brock's apartment because Eddie Brock got photos of Spider-Man at the crash site, and he tried to prove that Spider-Man kidnapped John Jameson. So Spidey comes there, sabotages the pictures on his camera, and then leaves. So when Brock comes to present the pictures, they're not of Spider-Man. So Jonah gets ticked at him and fires Eddie Brock. So Brock is ticked at Spider-Man. He's like, oh, you ruined my life. Thanks, man. Even though Brock is an absolute douchebag, but I do love his character. Then we finally get to the ending part of the arc, of this part of the arc. I'm not going to cover all of it because we're already talking way too long about this. This was supposed to be a small segment about superhero cartoons, which I'm glad I talked more about them in detail, but we'll talk more about these shows later because we have a lot of episodes. You could have a whole series about these shows, but let's get back to the finale. So Spidey is chasing Shocker because he found Shocker by the church. So he's going after him. He's ticked at Shocker. He's going to kill him. He's dodging every sonic blast that Shocker has. He's making him look like a chump. And then he finally corners him by the iconic bell tower. So he almost drops Shocker off of a cliff. But before he does that, he webs up Eddie Brock and says, I'm going to save you for dessert. Because Eddie Brock attempts to kill Spidey with like a flail. He has like a spiked flail. So the psychopath's going to try to murder him, even though he's terrible himself. So in my opinion, Spidey's justified for trying to kill Eddie, but it's a kid's show, so you can't teach those morals. You can't have actual morality in a kid's show. You have to censor it. But he almost kills Shocker, which is in his right. But then he stops himself because of plot, really. I guess because he was lashing out at other people. That part's not good. But him wanting to kill criminals, who gives a crap? So he defeats Shocker and, he detains Shocker. He webs him up and leaves him down there. And then what he does is he starts, the bell tower gets hit. And then his head starts hurting a little bit. And then he's like, oh, sonic vibrations, of course, because previously they used sonics on him and they hurt him. So they hurt the suit. So he starts hitting the bell and trying to get the suit off. And then finally, at some point, it just detaches from him and screams. And then he cocoons it in a web ball and leaves it at the church. But unfortunately, part of it goes down and lands on Eddie Brock. And Eddie becomes Venom. So that was easily my favorite story arc for Spider-Man. Like any Spider-Man. That is the best story arc, period. And also the best version of the black suited one. It was so good that the comics copied it. They copied the negative emotion aspect of him being symbiote infected. So the other ones I watched were X-Men Evolution and X-Men the Animated Series, but I feel like those deserve their own whole episodes where I talk about them because they're so good. X-Men Evolution, oh my gosh, I like every character in X-Men Evolution. And in most X-Men stuff, I don't like anyone but Professor X, Magneto, and Wolverine, and maybe Gambit. Anyone but them. Like Rogue's fine. I do like Rogue. Maybe Beast, but I don't care about Scott and Jean. This show made me like Scott and Jean. It did. It made me like them. It made Nightcrawler one of my favorite X-Men, which back then I didn't even... Like, X-Men Animated Series had a great episode with him, and I very much remember and love it, but Evolution made me love Nightcrawler. Another thing I want to touch on briefly is Ultimate Avengers, the movie. It was an animated movie back in the day, and my goodness, I think it's better than all the Avengers movies combined. Personally, I do. The characters are way better. Captain America is the same because Cap was always a great character. But Iron Man and him make up in that pretty quickly. There's no like civil war. There's no arrogance. They have a close relationship. Like Cap inspires every single person he's with and doesn't get into conflict with them. It's really cool. Iron Man's fun. He's not like as much of a jerk. He's more like sarcastic and funny and entertaining. His voice actor, Mark Warden, phenomenal. Literally, probably my favorite version of Tony Stark. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr. fans. Animated Tony wins. Any form of animated Tony from like the really good shows wins to me against the Avengers that we have in the movies. Thor's amazing. He's not stupid. He's got a little bit of jokiness and dopiness, but he's a really serious character who's basically so powerful that no one can match him. Same with Hulk. Nobody can beat Hulk. Iron Man can't beat Hulk. Ant-Man can't beat Hulk. Cap can't beat Hulk. Hawkeye's not even in it. Black Widow obviously can't beat Hulk. Wasp can't beat Hulk. Yes, Wasp was an Avenger before all this, before having some random solo movie. None of these characters can beat Hulk. Hulk is powerful. Bruce Banner's tormented. This guy's life sucks. It's terrible. Everyone hates him. Betty doesn't even like him. They lock him up and don't let him out because they know how dangerous Hulk is, how much damage he'll cause. And that's how Bruce Banner should be portrayed. Bruce Banner's a nerd, but here's the thing. He's tormented. He's troubled. The military hate him. Everyone hates him. No one trusts him. And that is exactly how he should be because Hulk is uncontrollable. You can't control Hulk. Hulk cannot be controlled. He is not stable. He's not safe to be around. When you're in a pinch, he's good to bust out, to let free and let loose on the enemy. But guess what? Hulk is not a beloved character. They can't interact with him. They can't calm him down. It only took Betty and like a sedative to get him to stop being Hulk. And he almost destroyed every Avenger. He almost killed every single one of them. And that's exactly how Hulk should be. Bruce Banner's not happy-go-lucky. Bruce Banner is sad. He's depressed. He's introspective. I'd say Ant-Man is the only character I really don't like in this version of Avengers. He's kind of a jerk. Like, Hank Pym is unbearable to be around. He's arrogant. He's snarky, but not in the fun way. He's very aggressive. He causes a lot of conflict. And in the second movie, you're really going to hate him when he says a certain thing, but it's not worth getting into. I think this movie deserves an episode of its own, but I will say this movie has the best version of Black Widow that will ever exist. I'm not even joking. She is a compassionate, loving, caring, tough, but understanding spy. She's not just there because of her looks. And I feel like Scarlett Johansson was there because of her looks. Her character had no depth at all. She was just there because a bunch of dudes wanted to see a girl in a tight uniform, which, yeah, just because, like, I understand she's attractive, but she doesn't do it for me, man. She's not as pretty as this Black Widow. And that's because this Black Widow is basically the glue that holds the team together. When Steve Rogers is doubting himself because in the first movie they kind of the whole team screws up and Cap's trying to get him to follow a mission, but they just wouldn't listen to him. And he's just frustrated. He's ticked off. He's like, oh, I shouldn't even be a leader then. I should just go back to retirement. But Black Widow comes in and basically says, hey, they're stupid. They made the mistakes. They need to grow up. They need to stop treating you like you're this old-fashioned fossil. You have valuable leadership skills that they can't provide. You are tougher than these guys. You know what you're doing. These guys are just goofing around. They're spoiled with their fancy powers and fancy suits of armor. You're just a normal guy who does have powers, but it's not like to the degree that these people have. And Cap is like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to stop feeling bad for myself, and we're going to get the team back together, and we're going to fight the Chitauri aliens. And the Chitauri in this are a lot more devastating than the ones in the MCU Avengers, because they actually kill people. They straight up kill dozens of people on screen with their guns. They just melt them into ashes. They're a heck of a lot tougher than the Chitauri from the MCU. They're strong enough to basically be the main villains of the Avengers. Like, there's no Loki, there's no stuff like that. It's just the Chitauri. They're basically the main villain for both of those things. And I'm going to be honest, I think they're far more compelling in some ways because they're intimidating. They actually kill people. They cause devastation. In Avengers 1, it's kind of played off as a joke. Like, they're not that important. The Chitauri aren't that powerful. They're just henchmen. But in frickin' this Avengers, they kill people. They can shapeshift. They're basically like Skrulls, but more powerful. And they look like elites from Halo. They're terrifying. Like, you never know who could be a Chitauri. And they're way cooler looking than the Skrull. I wish the Skrull were scrapped for the shape-shifting Chitauri with the arm cannons that melt people. They are so much better. But it was a phenomenal movie, and it ends with them fighting Hulk. That's the funny part, trying to calm him down. And it was a perfect way to end an amazing movie. I think we're going to save the Star Wars stuff for a different episode. I think right now we're just kind of caught on the superhero train, so I might as well finish it off. Now, we definitely will talk more about like the cartoons that I talked about before. We may bring up some of the old movies like the Tobey movies, the Andrew Spider-Man movies, but we're going to end this episode with the big boy. Iron Man 1. I was 9 years old when this movie came to theaters, and my goodness, it blew my mind. So I was already a Spider-Man fan, a Batman fan, and I'd say a Captain America fan even before the first movie came out. So I knew about these characters. I even knew about Iron Man because he was in some of the comics I had, the ones that I read, some of the games that I played. He was in it, like Marvel Nemesis. So I knew Iron Man existed, and I liked him a lot. But this movie made me like him even more. My goodness. Robert Downey Jr., phenomenal choice for Iron Man. You could not have picked a better choice for Iron Man. Then you have Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane. Easily my favorite MCU villain. Hands down. He didn't have some stupid, silly jokes. He wasn't some weird illusionist. He wasn't some punk. He was tough. He was smart. He was calculating. He was a little bit terrifying too, honestly. He was scary. He would go to great lengths to do what he had to do. He would betray his basically his benefactor's son and try to kill him just to get ahead in the tech race. He was a manipulative son of a gun too. He was nuts. And he played off, he was psychotic, and that was the best part about him. He was just evil for the sake of it. He didn't need to have this magical depth or anything. He didn't need a backstory. He didn't need any of that stuff. He was just a bad guy from the start, from the beginning, and you didn't even know it. It was a pretty shocking twist for me when I was young to see Obadiah be evil, because he was kind of likable, but when they showed him as evil, he freaking stole the show. He was one of the show stealers of this movie, other than Robert. The backstory of Tony Stark in this, him just being an absolute tool bag who sells weapons to the military, and the weapons get stolen. Like, they don't do the background checks to see who's getting the weapons, and he doesn't give a crap about that at the beginning. He doesn't care at all. He's just life of the party kind of playboy guy who just thinks about himself, doesn't really care about anyone else, makes weapons, thinks he's the coolest guy in the room, but then he gets humbled really quickly because he goes with these people to Afghanistan, these soldiers, to demonstrate the Jericho missile, his new prototype missile. And then when he gets in the vehicle and he goes with them and he's like bantering, not really being the nicest of guys, but then the Jeep that they're in gets attacked. And then he gets hit by one of his own missiles, the shrapnel from it, and it pierces his heart. And he's kind of going through this struggle of survival in this cave with Jensen, also played by an amazing actor. And basically, he essentially has to reconcile the fact that he needs to get out of this cave to stop the weapons that his company made, because he's tired of letting young American soldiers get killed by his own weapons. Seeing people just die, innocent villages getting burned down via his weapons or destroyed. So he decides to build a suit of armor after he gets an artificial heart built for him. He builds a suit of armor with a mini arc reactor in it to power it with Jensen. And they bond as they build the suit. There's kind of a father-son thing going on with their relationship, because Jensen's family died. They killed his family. They kidnapped him. So they work together and build the suit, and Tony is able to escape. But unfortunately for our guy Jensen, he doesn't escape. He's killed. And at first, Tony doesn't know his family's dead, Jensen's family. So he goes up to him and he's like, we're going to come back to your family. We're going to get you back to your family. We're going to escape. We got to stick to the plan. And then basically, Jensen tells him in his dying breath that his family's dead. And he tells him to just go make a life for himself. He tells Tony to do that. I'm pretty sure, from what I remember. I'd have to watch the movie again, but it was somewhere along those lines. So Stark escapes without him. He's like killing terrorists. He's lighting them on fire with his suit. Back when terrorists used to be able to be the villains, because for some reason nowadays we're too sensitive and snowflakey to show actual conflict and the actual bad people in said conflicts. But it's annoying. It's annoying. I'm not a fan of today's brand of wokeness. And I'm going to bring that up. I am going to. This isn't a political podcast, but I have to. But it was amazing. And then he, I'm not going to talk about or maybe I should. I think I will. So he escapes the captor. He reintegrates into society, and he immediately stops weapon production, which shocks everybody. Everyone's like, what the heck is wrong with him? Why is he changing? What jobs are we going to have? Why is he doing this? So the board cuts him off, basically, and says he has no say in anything, even though he's basically the son of the heir of the company, Howard Stark. So basically, he builds a second suit because he's tired of seeing people destroy villages. So he builds a second suit with his technology. He builds we get to see a really cool origin scene of him, like, programming him in all the functions, making the thrusters, testing the repulsor blast beams that are iconically on his hands. He's testing them out. You can see all the mechanical intricacies on the arms and the feet, and he's flying around a little bit. He's like hovering. He falls over, smacks into a wall, and then he gets mad at this robot he calls Dummy and basically stops him from fire extinguishing him until the end of the test. It's really funny stuff. I need to make an episode about the movie, but there's going to be a lot of skimming in this episode, and that's because we only got like 10 minutes left. So basically he builds the suit, and we see all like the CG in this movie is incredible. So he puts the Mark II on for the first time. We see my personal favorite suit, the silver Mark II. I don't care for the red and gold stuff. I don't care about the bells and whistles. I prefer the Mark II's silver paint. I don't Like, the red and gold is cool, but I'm a Mark II man for life. So he flies around in the Mark II like he's actually flying. He tests it in this really cool scene as we see all like the mechanical bits move around. And then he takes off and goes for like the NASA record of how someone got really high in a rocket. He tried to beat it. And then he's flying around. The music's the soundtrack. Whoever did the soundtrack, it's blaring. The guitar's playing. This like techno-y thing's going on. It's some of the best movie soundtrack ever. I don't think the MCU has topped Iron Man 1 soundtrack-wise, but this kid drops his ice cream because he sees Iron Man flying around above him. He's on like a Ferris wheel, and he sees Tony just flying so fast. He's shocked. And then Tony flies up into space, and then his suit freezes up because of the pressure, and he almost dies. But then he smacks this thing. I mean, I think he uses like it's. You see, people. It's been a while since I've watched this movie, but he smacks something on his suit that makes the ice go away, so he can move because he's falling to his death, frozen. But he unfreezes when he reaches the atmosphere and flies back home after the test. And my goodness, what a scene that was! His relationship with Pepper's also really cool, even though I can't really stand Gwyneth Paltrow. Same with Terrence Howard. I like his character, but I do not like him as a person. But they're great. All of these characters, the triangle of characters they have, Tony, Rhodey, and Pepper, are all really good together. This is like, whoever picked these people should be like remembered as a legend, basically. But you know, Tony and Pepper's relationship is really nice. It's a woman acting like a woman in the MCU. She doesn't just kick butt and act all sarcastic and like she's really cool. She's just a normal woman. It's kind of refreshing. And that's why I don't care for her being in a suit of armor in Endgame. I like her being a damsel. Some women gotta be damsels. I'm sorry. Women are weaker than men. That is a fact. That is a fact. The strongest man is stronger than the strongest woman. That is a fact. I don't even have to Google it. I'm not going to let Google's biased answers tell me that. But she is a likable character. She has this compassion and this warmth and this heart. Kind of like how I brought up with Black Widow and Ultimate Avengers. She really is the glue that holds Tony together. Like, she keeps him sane. Rhodey keeps him in check. And that's what I like about him. He's tough on Tony. He's like, dude, you're doing the wrong thing over and over again, man. You should have told us about this suit, you know. You're arrogant. You're this, you're that. He's the voice of reason for Tony, and that's what I love about Rhodey. He's actually a good friend, you know. He's actually a decent human being. He's a tough soldier. Like, he reminds me of people I've actually seen in the military. He's courageous. He's tough. He's not this coward. He's got some funny humor. He's sarcastic. All these characters are phenomenal. They all combine together to be like so cool. And then I didn't even bring up the scene where he comes in the Mark III and shoots up the terrorists in the village. It was just amazing. It was amazing. And it also had an amazing video game. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk about that for long. We got like 7 minutes left. But Iron Man 1, the showdown with Ironmonger, where Tony has to like try to outsmart him instead of just like brute force him like he's been doing with the other enemies. Stain being like an absolute menace in this giant Iron Man suit before the Hulkbuster even existed. It was just amazing. It was a movie that just... Movies were different back then. Phase 1 MCU is better than the other phases. I'm just going to be honest. I like some of the Phase 2 movies. Some of them are really good, but Phase 1, man. Phase 1's my favorite phase. We're going to loop back around to... We're going to loop back around to the whole physical media and like the theater experience thing. I miss that era. I miss when you just go rent DVDs with your family and like eat pizza at home, and then you had to get the DVD back to the rental company. You know, we had a family video. We would go there. We'd hang out together. We'd go to the video store. We'd actually see human beings instead of just clicking a button on a TV. It was something else. I just loved those days. I love those times. I miss when DVDs were the primary form, when all you had was Blu-rays, DVDs, TV, and VHS. I want to go back to those days, personally. And considering that there is a news story that came out recently that showed that DVD space can be like way more. You can get way more space on a disc. Like you could fit a whole TV series. It's in the hundreds, like 100-something terabytes, possibly 200 terabytes of storage. These new DVDs that they're researching. And in my head, I'm like, guys, how did you do so bad that, like, you could play a single COD game off that DVD? And I feel like it's nice, DVDs are, because having to install stuff through, like, for games, you have to install stuff through Steam, which I like Steam, but I'm going to be honest, it doesn't feel as cool as putting a disc in. It doesn't feel as permanent. What's annoying about Steam is they can delist games. They can take things off. Yes, you still own the game, but if you lose your account, it's basically gone and lost to the ages. So I personally prefer DVDs and CDs and discs because they can't delist those. You have the disc. The disc is there. You know, you have it forever. You don't just get rid of it. They can't just be like, oh, this is too dated, we have to remove it, or oh, this has some political thing that we don't like in it. You can just keep the media the way it was, you know, the way it originally came out. Like Halo, I can play the original Halo, the first Halo game on PC and mod it without having to deal with 343 or Microsoft breathing down my neck and saying, hey, at some point we're going to pull the plug, because they will. They will pull the plug on MCC, and that's, you know, the Master Chief Collection. They will pull the plug on it. Fans may be able to restore it, but they're going to pull the plug on it at some point. So I'm going to be honest. I prefer having a physical copy of something. Same with movies. It's fun sitting around, like sitting by the fire and putting a DVD in of like your favorite Christmas movie and just sitting there and enjoying it, knowing that that movie is forever going to be on that disc. You have it for good on that form of media. And if you don't, you can put it on a USB drive. I prefer that. Same with TV shows. You had to, like back then, you couldn't really choose what you wanted to watch. You had to look at the schedule of the network and plan out when you wanted to watch it. But as a kid, you didn't think about that stuff. You were forced to watch shows you didn't like, shows you'd never seen. Now you can just pick and choose. So you can just be like, oh, if I don't want to watch this, I don't have to watch it. Back in the day, you had what you got, and we were okay with it. And I miss those days. I miss when you just had to take a chance on something. You know, you had to take a chance on a show, or you had to take a chance on a game, because video games were a lot more unique back then. They were. They were more unique art style-wise. They weren't all photorealistic. They weren't half-finished all the time. Games had a passion to them. This industry has no passion to it. Everything is just soulless, looks the same. Movies have the same acting beats. They have the same weird DEI garbage. Nobody cares about making good movies anymore. It's just about the stupid message. Back in the day, you just watched a movie and liked it for what it was. You didn't think about the underlying meaning of all this stuff. It was just a movie. You just had fun. And I miss those days. But, you know, the same with the theater. The theater is my way of watching movies. If there's a new release, I want to see it in theaters. I don't want to see it at home. I don't care about it. If it's a good enough movie, and even if it isn't, for me, you know what? I'm even going to take a chance on bad movies, you know? I took a chance on Kraven the Hunter. I loved that movie. I absolutely loved it. It was a really good movie. Was it the best Marvel movie of all time? No, but the action was fun. It reminded me of the days when movies were just movies. That's all they were. They weren't connected to some massive universe that they were trying to build into Avengers. It was just a fun Marvel movie, and it felt standalone from the other ones. And then you'd sneak your candy into the movie theater because, my goodness, the frickin' candy at movie theaters is so overpriced. Like, I never buy anything but popcorn and a drink, personally. I think that's way better, in my honest opinion, than just going to the theater and getting a bunch of candy or nachos. I don't understand the appeal of getting food at a theater. I'd rather just have popcorn, because it's basically a dinner already. The thing's so buttery, it fills you up so much that you already had dinner, essentially. And then you get like your free refill, you come home, you think about the movie, it's on your mind throughout the week. It was so freaking cool, man. I miss those days. I miss the 2000s. Take me back. Take me back to them at this age. Like not even take me back to them, bring them back. Bring back the 2000s. Please bring them back. Bring back the humor. Bring back the games. Bring back the movies. Like, bring back that passion that people had for creativity. But we're at the end of the episode. Finally, I'm going to close this out. God bless, people. This was a fun episode. This is the first episode, and it is going to be released pretty quickly. Since it's the first episode, who knows? I am going to put timestamps, but I don't know if the editing is going to be as crazy for the first episode. I got to find a way to mark these specific things, but regardless, and at some point, I'm going to, like our Gaming Dudes podcast that's on the main channel, I'm going to use real cameras, and you'll be able to actually see me talking into my microphone. So this is the first episode, and see you in the next one.